The crystal towers of HFY stretched toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, 47 different species sat in a circle that had remained unchanged for 10,000 years. The air hummed with translation. Devices as Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire stood at the center, his scaled hands shaking as he held a data pad. Captain Jake Morrison was 3 star systems away when the message reached him. He sat in the command chair of the UES Liberty, watching stars streak past through the viewscreen. His ship was returning from a routine diplomatic mission to the Kelani homeworld. The mission had gone well, another small step toward better relations. With their aquatic neighbors. Commander Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jake and settled into her chair beside him. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the navigation console. Their crew of 60 was mostly human, with a few alien exchange officers, who had become good friends over the years. The communication alert changed everything. The message came through the encrypted Earth channel, marked with the highest priority codes. Jake read it twice before the words sank in. Lisa leaned over to see the screen, and her coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering on the metal floor. 3 hours earlier on HFY, Ambassador Zethkar had begun his presentation to the Galactic Council. The massive chamber could hold thousands, but today only the 47 permanent members were present. Each species had earned their seat through age, wisdom, or power. The humans had been waiting for their membership application to be reviewed. For 50 years, Dr. Helen Rodriguez sat in the observation deck, one of only 3 humans allowed to witness council sessions. She had been Earth's representative to the council for the past decade, fighting for humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her hands were folded calmly in her lap. She had no idea what was coming. Zethkar's voice carried clearly through the chamber as he began reading from the data pad. Honored council members, we gather today to address a threat to galactic stability unlike any we have faced in our recorded history. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled delegates. The species known as humans have violated every principle upon which our civilization stands. The Gelti representative, an ancient being whose crystalline body had witnessed the rise and fall of entire star systems, leaned forward with interest. The aquatic Nefri delegate floated in her specialized tank, her tentacles moving in patterns that showed concern. Even the energy beings of the Vexstar Collective seemed to flicker with attention. Jake Morrison stared at the message on his screen. The words were simple and clear, but they made no sense. By unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, the human species has been declared illegal. All human expansion must cease immediately. All colonies must be abandoned within 1 galactic standard year. Failure to comply will result in species management protocols. Lisa Carter had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years. She had fought pirates, negotiated with alien traders, and helped establish colonies on dozens of worlds. She had never heard of species management protocols, but the term made her stomach turn cold. Back on HFY, Zethkar continued his presentation. In the past 3 centuries, humans have established colonies on over 200 worlds. This rate of expansion is unprecedented in galactic history. Most species require millennia to achieve such distribution. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. But expansion alone is not their crime. Dr. Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. She had been proud of humanity's rapid growth among the stars. Earth's children had spread across the galaxy, building new homes and new lives on distant worlds. They had traded with alien species, learned from them, and contributed their own knowledge in return. How could this be a crime? The Vorthan ambassador touched his datapad, and holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. They showed human ships, human cities, and human technologies that had been developed in just the past 50 years. Observe their rate of technological advancement, Zethkar said. In 5 decades of contact with galactic civilization, they have not merely adopted our technologies. They have improved upon them. The council members stirred uneasily. The fusion reactors humans had developed were 30% more efficient than traditional designs. Their starship engines could travel faster and use less fuel. Their medical techniques had extended the lifespans of several alien species who had traded with them. To the humans, this seemed like natural progress. To the council, it was terrifying. Jake Morrison called his senior officers to the bridge. Chief Engineer Danny Hayes arrived first, followed by Dr. Maya Singh from the Science Department and Lieutenant Amy Brooks from Tactical. They stood around the captain's chair as Jake read the message aloud. The silence that followed was broken only by the ship's engines. Species management protocols, Danny said quietly. He was a veteran of the colonial wars, a tough man who had seen the worst of human conflict. That sounds like they want to put us in cages. Dr. Singh accessed her personal database of galactic law. She was a young woman, barely 30, but she had spent her entire adult life studying alien cultures and technologies. Her fingers flew over her tablet as she searched for references to species management. What she found made her face go pale. On HFY, Zethkar reached the heart of his argument. The humans possess a trait that threatens the very foundation of our peaceful galaxy, he announced. They adapt. He let the word hang in the air like a curse. When faced with a problem, they do not seek guidance from elder species. They do not wait for proper authorization. They simply change. The council chamber erupted in whispered conversations as delegates discussed this revelation among themselves. The GLT representative's crystalline form shifted colors, displaying patterns of deep concern. The Nefri delegate's tentacles writhed in her tank. Even the energy beings seemed to pulse with agitation. Dr. Rodriguez gripped the railing of the observation deck. She thought of the human colonies she had visited, the innovations she had seen, the problems her species had solved through creativity and determination. This was what made humans dangerous. Their ability to think of new solutions. Throughout galactic history, stability has been maintained through careful control of development, Zethkar continued. Each species advances at a measured pace, guided by the wisdom of those who came before. But humans refuse this guidance. They create new technologies without permission. They establish colonies without authorization. They solve problems in ways that have never been attempted. Jake Morrison understood now. The message from Earth contained more than just the Council's declaration. It included historical records that Dr. Singh had discovered, evidence of other species that had been declared illegal in the past. 7 civilizations had faced species management protocols over the past 10,000 years. None of them existed as free peoples anymore. The voting began without debate. One by one, each of the 47 species cast their decision. The ancient Gelti voted first, their crystalline delegate pulsing with solemn light. The Vorthan Empire voted second, Zethkar's own people condemning humanity. The Nefri voted third, their aquatic representatives' tentacles curling with what looked like regret. 40-7 votes. 47 species agreeing that humanity was too dangerous to exist freely in the galaxy. Not because humans were violent or evil, but because they changed things. Because they grew too fast, learned too quickly, and refused to ask permission before reaching for the stars. Dr. Rodriguez watched in horror as the final vote was cast. The chamber fell silent as the result was announced. Humanity had won Galactic. Standard year to comply with the Council's demands. All colonies must be abandoned. All technological development must cease. All human expansion must end. What the Council did not know was that humans had been preparing for this moment since first contact 50 years ago. Deep in the files of Earth's government were contingency plans that had seemed paranoid at the time. Operation Wildfire was about to begin. Jake Morrison looked at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The war for humanity's freedom was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council declared humanity illegal. Across the galaxy, alien observers watched with satisfaction as human colonies went dark one by one. Trade routes that had buzzed with human merchant ships fell silent. The sprawling cities on New Terra appeared abandoned from orbital scans. Even Earth itself had stopped responding to communication attempts. Ambassador Zethkar stood in his private office on HFY, looking out at the crystal spires that caught the purple sunlight. His scaled hands held a report from Vorthen. Intelligence Services. Every human settlement they had monitored was shutting down according to schedule. The dangerous species was finally being contained. But beneath the surface of the galaxy, something else was happening. In the asteroid fields of the Kepler system, Colonel Danny Hayes floated in zero gravity inside a hollowed-out rock the size of a city. Around him, thousands of humans worked in shifts to build something the galaxy had never seen before. The asteroid looked dead from the outside, just another chunk of rock drifting in space. Inside, it hummed with activity. Danny had been chosen to lead Operation Wildfire because he understood both war and secrecy. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. His voice was quiet but carried authority when he spoke to the workers around him. They were building a new kind of human civilization, one that could exist without the galaxy, knowing it was there. Dr. Maya Singh worked in a laboratory carved deep inside a gas giant's moon. The facility was hidden beneath kilometers of ice, powered by geothermal vents that had warmed the moon's core for billions of years. She was young for such responsibility, only 32, but her understanding of both human and alien technology made her invaluable to the resistance. Maya's team had spent the past 3 months reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could find. They had studied Vorthen fusion cores, Nefri quantum computers, and Gel-T crystal matrices. But they had not simply copied these designs. They had improved them, combining alien concepts with human creativity to create something entirely new. The manufacturing facility Maya supervised could build starships that left no energy signature. Their hulls were made from a composite material that bent light around itself, making the ships nearly invisible to sensors. The engines ran on a type of fusion reaction. It consumed stellar wind, meaning they could refuel anywhere in space without stopping. Meanwhile, on the former colony, world of New Vancouver, Dr. Alex Turner made a discovery that changed everything. Alex was a xenobiologist who had been studying the ruins of ancient civilizations when the Council's declaration reached him. Instead of evacuating like the other colonists, he had hidden in the abandoned research station and continued his work. Research station sat on a plateau overlooking a valley where an unknown species had once built a great city. The buildings were made of a strange metal that had not corroded in millions of years. Alex had been trying to understand this lost civilization when he found the archive chamber buried beneath the central temple. The chamber contained data crystal that held the history of 7 different species. As Alex translated the ancient records, he realized with growing horror that each of these civilizations had faced the same fate as humanity. The Galactic Council had declared them illegal, forced them to abandon their colonies, and subjected them to species management protocols. The first had been the Corvani, a race of brilliant engineers who had developed faster-than-light travel in just 2 centuries. The Council had deemed their rapid advancement dangerous. The second were the Helix, shapeshifters who could adapt to any environment. Their flexibility had been seen as a threat to galactic stability. 5 more species had followed, each one guilty of the same crime, growing too fast and changing too much. Alex transmitted his findings through secret channels to every hidden human base in the galaxy. The knowledge spread like wildfire through the underground network Danny Hayes had built. Humanity was not the first species to be declared illegal, and if the pattern held, they would not be the last. Captain Jake Morrison had returned to Earth to find a world transformed. The planet still looked normal from orbit, but the surface told a different story. Entire cities had been moved underground. Massive construction projects had hollowed out mountain ranges and ocean floors. The human government had been preparing for this day longer than anyone had realized. President Carl Walker met with Jake in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The president was a tall man with white hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. He explained that Operation Wildfire had been planned since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization 50 years ago. Earth's leaders had always suspected that their rapid growth might be seen as a threat. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Humanity would appear to comply with the Council's demands while secretly building a new civilization in the shadows. Hidden bases were being constructed throughout the galaxy, each one designed to be completely undetectable. Advanced manufacturing facilities would produce ships and weapons, using hybrid technologies that surpassed anything the Council possessed. Commander Lisa Carter found herself assigned to one of the most dangerous missions in human history. She had been chosen to make contact with the younger species in the galaxy, the ones who might be sympathetic to humanity's cause. Her first target was the Kelani homeworld, where she had served as a diplomatic officer before the Declaration. Lisa's ship was one of the new stealth vessels Maya Singh's team had developed. It looked like a standard human transport from the outside, the kind that might be carrying refugees away from abandoned colonies. But hidden beneath its ordinary hull were systems that could make it disappear from sensors completely. The Kelani were an aquatic species who had achieved spaceflight only 2 centuries ago. They were still considered newcomers by the older species on the Council, barely tolerated and certainly not trusted with important decisions. Lisa believed they might understand what humanity was facing. She met with Kelani leader Threshnell in an underwater city on their homeworld. The Kelani looked like enormous dolphins with 4 arms and highly developed brains. Threshnell listened carefully as Lisa explained humanity's situation, his large eyes showing intelligence and concern. "Your species grows too quickly," Threshnell said in his musical voice. "This frightens the old ones. They remember when change meant war and chaos. Now they prefer stillness, even if it means death by inches." He paused, his arms moving in patterns. That indicated deep thought. "My people face the same judgment. We advance too fast for their comfort. Perhaps we have more in common than the Council would like." The Kelani agreed to provide covert assistance to humanity's resistance. There, ocean worlds would serve as hidden bases where human ships could refuel and repair. More importantly, they would share intelligence about Council activities and help identify other species who might be willing to oppose the established order. Similar meetings were taking place throughout the galaxy. The HFY, despite their representatives' vote in the Council, were deeply divided about humanity's fate. Many of their younger members admired human innovation and creativity. They began providing secret support, allowing human facilities to be built in the deepest trenches of their ocean worlds. Even some members of established Council species began to question the Declaration. A faction of younger Vorthan military officers reached out to the human resistance, offering information about Council fleet movements and strategic plans. They had seen the benefits of human technology and trade, and they understood that the galaxy was becoming smaller and more closed under the Council's rigid control. Danny Hayes, coordinated all of these activities from his hidden command center in the asteroid belt. His network of secret bases and covert allies was growing every day. Human refugees who had supposedly fled to Earth were actually manning hidden facilities throughout the galaxy. Ships that appeared to be carrying evacuees were secretly transporting equipment and personnel to new construction sites. The most ambitious project was taking place in the Galactic Rim, far from any Council patrol routes. There, human engineers were building something unprecedented, a mobile base the size of a small moon. It would serve as the command center for humanity's hidden fleet and the heart of their resistance operations. By the end of the third month, the Galactic Council believed they had successfully contained the human threat. Their observers reported empty colonies and silent trade routes. Ambassador Zethkar filed reports praising the Council's swift action in preventing a crisis. But scattered throughout the galaxy, in asteroid fields and nebulae, in ocean trenches and gas giant moons, humanity was building something the Council had never imagined. They were not just hiding from galactic civilization. They were preparing to change it forever. The Resistance was ready to move to the next phase of Operation Wildfire. Soon, the galaxy would learn that declaring humans illegal had been the Council's greatest mistake. 6 months had passed since the declaration, and Counselor Yulith of the ancient Jelti was beginning to have doubts. Her crystalline body sat in the meditation chamber of her private tower on HFY, analyzing data streams from across the galaxy. The energy patterns she was seeing made no sense according to everything she knew about human technology. Yulith had lived for 3,000 years and had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Her crystal form could process information faster than most organic brains, and she had access to sensor networks that monitored every corner of known space. What she was detecting in the supposedly empty human territories should have been impossible. The readings were subtle, almost invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. Brief energy spikes in star systems where human colonies had been abandoned. Gravitational anomalies near asteroid fields that should have been completely dead. Quantum signatures that appeared for microseconds before vanishing without explanation. Vorthan patrol fleet, led by Captain Corvex, had been dispatched to investigate the former human colony of Eden's Gate. The world had been one of humanity's proudest achievements, a garden planet where millions had lived in harmony with the native ecosystem. Orbital scans showed it was completely lifeless now. Just as the compliance reports had indicated, Captain Corvex was a veteran officer who had served the Vorthan Empire for 40 years. He had a reputation for thoroughness that made him perfect for this kind of investigation. His ship, the Sovereign's Will, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Eden's Gate system with 3 smaller vessels following behind. The initial scans confirmed what they expected to find. The planet showed no signs of technological activity. No power signatures, no communication signals, no movement of any kind. The orbital stations had been completely dismantled. Even the space elevator that had connected the surface to orbit was gone, leaving only empty anchor points floating in space. But Captain Corvex had not survived 4 decades of military service by accepting surface appearances. He ordered his ships to conduct detailed sensor sweeps of the entire system, looking for anything that might indicate human presence. What they found changed everything. The planet's surface appeared dead from orbit, but deep penetration scans revealed a different story. Beneath the ground, vast networks of tunnels and chambers stretched across entire continents. Power sources, buried kilometers underground, provided energy for what looked like an entire civilization living in secret beneath the planet's crust. Commander Lisa Carter was in the hidden command center beneath Eden's Gate when the Vorthan ships arrived. She had been coordinating resistance activities across the sector from this facility, which served as one of humanity's most important underground bases. The surface world had been abandoned as ordered, But 40 million humans now lived in the subterranean cities they had built. The underground civilization was a marvel of human engineering and alien technology working together. Fusion reactors powered by Kelani quantum cores provided unlimited energy. Atmospheric processors using NeFree biotechnology recycled air and water with perfect efficiency. Food came from vertical farms that used gel-T crystal matrices to accelerate. Plant growth. Lisa watched the tactical displays as the Vorthan ships began their detailed scans. She knew it was only a matter of time before they detected the underground installations. The stealth systems that hid the surface were not designed to fool the kind of intensive investigation Captain Korvix was conducting. "They're going to find." "U.S.," said Major Bill Roberts, Lisa's second-in-command. He was a stocky man with graying hair who had served with distinction in the Colonial Defense Forces before the Declaration. His tactical expertise had been invaluable in designing Eden's Gate's hidden defenses. Lisa nodded grimly. "Then we make sure they understand what they found." She activated the communication system that connected her to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. "All units, this is Carter. The cover is blown. Execute Revelation Protocol." Meanwhile, on HFY, Dr. Helen Rodriguez had been living under house arrest in a diplomatic compound for the past 6 months. The Council had not harmed her, but they had made it clear that she was not free to leave. 2 Vorthan guards stood outside her quarters at all times, and all her communications were monitored. Helen had used the time to study galactic law and history, searching for any precedent that might help humanity's cause. What she had discovered was disturbing but not surprising. The Galactic Council's authority rested on a foundation of carefully maintained lies and historical revisionism. The Council claimed to be a democratic institution where all member species had equal voice in galactic affairs. But Helen's research had revealed the truth. The 47 Council species were divided into 3 tiers, with only the oldest and most powerful species having real authority. The younger species were essentially puppets. Their votes counted only when they agreed with their masters. Commander Lisa Carter's rescue mission arrived at HFY like a ghost in the night. Her ship, the New Horizon, had been built using the most advanced stealth technology humanity possessed. It could pass through sensor nets undetected, land without leaving traces, and extract targets from heavily guarded locations. The rescue team consisted of 12 humans wearing adaptive camouflage suits that could mimic any environment. They moved through the diplomatic compound like shadows, neutralizing security systems and avoiding patrols with an efficiency that would have impressed the galaxy's best special forces. Units. Helen Rodriguez had been expecting them. The Resistance had found ways to communicate with her despite the monitoring, using quantum-encrypted messages hidden in routine diplomatic traffic. She was ready when the team reached her quarters with a small bag containing the most important documents she had discovered. The extraction went perfectly until they reached the compound's outer perimeter. A Vorthan patrol had detected an anomaly in the security grid and was investigating. Lisa Carter made a split-second decision that changed the course of galactic history. Instead of retreating, she chose to fight. The battle lasted only minutes, but it revealed capabilities that shocked the Vorthan forces. The human weapons were unlike anything in their databases, combining energy projection with kinetic acceleration in ways that bypassed traditional shields. The adaptive armor the humans wore seemed to learn from each attack, becoming more resistant with every shot fired at it. More importantly, the humans fought with a coordination and creativity that the Vorthans had never encountered. They adapted their tactics in real time, turned defensive positions into offensive weapons, and used the environment itself as part of their strategy. It was a demonstration of the very qualities that had made the Council declare humanity illegal. During the extraction, Helen Rodriguez was able to access the Council's central archives. What she downloaded in those few minutes would expose secrets that had been hidden for millennia. The true history of the 7 species that had been declared illegal before humanity. The real power structure of the Galactic Council. The locations of prison worlds where managed species were still being held. Back on Eden's Gate, Captain Corvex was dealing with his own revelations. His ground teams had penetrated the underground cities and found something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans had not simply hidden from the Council's authority. They had created an entirely new form of civilization. The underground cities were not primitive bunkers or temporary shelters. They were thriving communities where human culture had evolved in new directions. Art, music, literature, and science had all developed along paths that would have been impossible under the Council's restrictive oversight. Children born after the Declaration were growing up in a society that was truly free to innovate and explore. But what shocked Captain Corvex most was discovering that the humans were not alone. Representatives of the 7 managed species were living among them as equals and partners. The Corvani engineers, who had been declared illegal too, 1,000 years ago were working alongside human technicians. Helix shapeshifters were serving as diplomats and negotiators. 5 other supposedly extinct or contained species were thriving in humanity's underground. Civilization. Dr. Alex Turner had been coordinating these relationships from his research base on New Vancouver. His discovery of the ancient archives had led to something extraordinary: contact with the survivors of every species the Council had ever declared illegal. They had not been destroyed or completely contained as the official records claimed. They had been waiting, preserving their knowledge and culture in secret, hoping that someday another species would challenge the Council's tyranny. The revelation protocol that Lisa Carter had activated was more than just a military response to discovery. It was humanity's declaration that the age of hiding was over. Across the galaxy, human facilities that had remained hidden for months suddenly came online and began broadcasting their existence to every inhabited world. The broadcasts contained more than just proof that humanity had survived the Council's declaration. They included the historical records Alex Turner had discovered, the governmental archives Helen Rodriguez had stolen, and testimony from representatives of the 7 supposedly extinct species. The galaxy was burning with revolution when Lieutenant Amy Brooks received her most dangerous assignment. She stood in the briefing room aboard the hidden mobile base called Freedom Station, looking at holographic displays that showed the chaos spreading across known space. At 26, she was the youngest starship commander in human history, but her tactical brilliance had earned her the respect of veterans twice her age. Colonel Danny Hayes stood at the front of the room, his weathered face grim as he outlined the mission. Behind him, the displays showed the prison world of Kethmer, a heavily fortified planet that had been hidden from galactic maps for 3,000 years. It was there that the Galactic Council kept the representatives of the 7 species they had declared illegal throughout history. The prison has automated defenses that have never been breached, Danny explained to the assembled officers. Energy. Shields that can stop a supernova blast. Weapon platforms that can track and destroy targets moving at near light speed. The Council considers it absolutely impregnable. Amy studied the tactical readouts with the intensity that had made her famous among the Resistance. Her ship, the New Horizon, was one of only 12 vessels equipped with humanity's most advanced hybrid technology. It combined human innovation with improvements on alien designs in ways that created something entirely new. The New Horizon looked like a standard human corvette from the outside, but appearances were deceiving. Its hull was made from a material that could shift its molecular structure to absorb or deflect different types of energy. The engines used a fusion process that consumed stellar radiation, making them nearly impossible to track. Most importantly, the ship's computer systems could adapt and evolve during combat. Learning from each encounter and becoming more effective doctor, Maya Singh had spent months perfecting the technology that made such ships possible. Working from her hidden laboratory in the ice moon of Titan VII, she had pushed the boundaries of what both human and alien science considered achievable. Her breakthrough had been realizing that the greatest strength of each alien technology was also its greatest weakness when properly understood. The GLT crystal matrices that powered many galactic systems were incredibly efficient, but followed rigid patterns that could be predicted and countered. Vorthan fusion cores were powerful, but produced distinctive signatures that could be masked or redirected. Nafri quantum computers were fast, but relied on connections that could be disrupted if you knew the right frequencies. Maya had taken all of these alien technologies and added the one thing that made humans different: the ability to improvise. Her hybrid systems could change their operating parameters in real time, adapting to new situations faster than any alien technology could respond. It was this adaptability that made Amy's mission possible. The Kethmer system was located in a region of space that was officially empty on all galactic charts. The prison world orbited a dying red giant star whose radiation made long-range sensors unreliable. This natural interference had been one reason the Council had chosen this location, but it also provided cover for Amy's approach. The New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, its stealth systems already adapting to the unique radiation patterns of the dying star. Amy sat in the captain's chair, surrounded by a crew of 8 humans who had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Lieutenant Rob Martinez served as her tactical officer, a young man whose understanding of alien weapon systems rivaled that of the engineers who had built them. Chief Engineer Kelly Park had personally modified the ship's systems to handle the stresses of the mission. Navigator Tom Wilson could plot courses through hazards that would destroy most ships. The prison world of Kethmer appeared on their screens like a metallic moon, its surface covered with defensive installations that had been built by a dozen different species over the course of millennia. Energy shields surrounded the planet in multiple layers, each one calibrated to stop a different type of attack. Weapon platforms floated in orbital formations that could create overlapping fields of fire with no blind spots. But Amy had studied the defense patterns for weeks, and she had noticed something that the prison's designers had not considered. The systems were ancient, built by species that thought in terms of direct confrontation and overwhelming force. They were designed to stop attacks that followed predictable patterns and used conventional strategies. The New Horizon began its approach using tactics that no galactic military had ever developed. Instead of trying to penetrate the shields, Amy's ship began broadcasting signals that mimicked the quantum signatures of the automated defense systems themselves. To the prison sensors, the New Horizon appeared to be just another defensive platform that had somehow been moved out of position. The first layer of shields parted to allow the displaced platform to return to its proper orbit. The weapon systems tracked the ship but did not fire, their targeting computers confused by signals that identified the New Horizon as friendly. By the time the automated systems realized what was happening, Amy's ship was already inside the defensive perimeter. The surface of Kethmer was a maze of detention facilities built into natural rock formations and reinforced with materials that could withstand planet-cracking weapons. Each prison block was designed to hold a different type of species, with environmental controls and security measures tailored to prevent escape by beings with specific biological capabilities. Amy's team landed near the Central Command Facility, a massive structure that controlled all the prison systems. They moved quickly through corridors that had not seen organic life in centuries, their adaptive armor changing color and texture to match the surroundings as they advanced. The prisoners they found were not what Amy had expected. The representatives of the 7 illegal species had not been broken by their captivity. Instead, They had spent their centuries in prison organizing, planning, and preparing for the day when someone would finally challenge the council's authority. The first prisoner Amy encountered was a Corvani engineer named Vexno, whose people had been declared illegal 2,000 years ago for developing space travel too quickly. Despite being imprisoned for most of his adult life, his mind was still sharp and his spirit unbroken. He had used his time to design escape plans and study the prison's weaknesses. The Helix shapeshifter called 26 had maintained detailed records of every council action affecting the imprisoned species. Her ability to change form had allowed her to observe prison operations from multiple perspectives, gathering intelligence that would prove crucial to the resistance. 5 other species were represented among the prisoners, each bringing unique knowledge and capabilities that the council had deemed too dangerous to allow in free society. Together, they represented thousands of years of suppressed innovation and creativity. But Amy's mission was not just about freeing prisoners. She was broadcasting the entire operation across the galaxy, using quantum transmitters that could punch through any attempt at jamming or interference. Every species in known space was watching as humanity did what the Galactic Council claimed was impossible. The prison's defenses that had protected ThemHFY for 3 millennia fell in 17 minutes. Amy's team used tactics that combined human creativity with alien technology in ways that the automated systems could not counter. They turned the prison's own defenses against itself, reprogramming weapon platforms to create safe corridors and redirecting shield generators to block counterattacks. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity's youngest starship commander led the greatest prison break in recorded history. But the mission was more than just a rescue operation. It was proof that the Council's claim of invincibility was a lie, and that the technologies they had hoarded for millennia could be overcome by species willing to think in new ways. As the New Horizon lifted off from ThemHFY with its cargo of liberated prisoners, Amy received a transmission from Colonel Danny Hayes back on Freedom Station. The prison break had triggered exactly the response they had hoped for. Across the galaxy, the younger species were rising in open rebellion against Council authority. The Kelani had declared independence from the Vorthan Empire and were mobilizing their fleets to defend their homeworld. The Nefri had withdrawn from all Council operations and were offering sanctuary to any species seeking freedom from the established order. Even some of the middle-tier Council species were beginning to question whether the time had come for fundamental change. But the most significant development was happening in the Council chambers themselves. The revelation of ThemHFY's existence had shattered the carefully maintained fiction that the Council governed with the consent of all galactic species. Historical records that had been classified for millennia were being leaked by Council members, who could no longer stomach the deception. Ambassador Zethkar, who had delivered the original declaration against humanity, found himself facing questions from his own people about the Council's true nature. The Vorthan military was divided between those who supported the traditional order and younger officers who admired human innovation and courage. Amy Brooks had become a symbol of everything the Council feared about humanity. She was young, creative. 1 year had passed since the Galactic Council declared humanity illegal, and the galaxy was no longer the same place. The crystal towers of HFY still reached toward the purple sky, but the chambers where 47 species had once ruled in unity now echoed with empty seats and bitter arguments. Half the Council members had abandoned their posts, and the others could barely agree on what day it was. President Carl Walker stood at the entrance to the Grand Council chamber. But he was not alone. Behind him walked representatives of 30 different species, some former Council members who had chosen freedom over control, others liberated from centuries of suppression. The Corvani engineer Vexno walked beside Dr. Helen Rodriguez there. Shared experience of imprisonment, creating an unlikely friendship. The Helix Shapeshifter 26 moved in her natural form, no longer hiding what she was from those who had feared her people's adaptability. Ambassador Zethkar remained in his council seat, but his scaled hands shook as he watched the procession enter the chamber. His own people, the Vorthan Empire, had split into 3 factions. The traditionalists still supported the old order, but they were outnumbered by younger Vorthans, who admired human innovation, and older ones who were tired of maintaining an empire built on lies. The war that had raged across the galaxy for the past 6 months had not been fought with massive fleets and planet-destroying weapons, as everyone had expected. Instead, it had been a conflict of ideas, technologies, and the fundamental question of what galactic civilization should become. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from his old rank of captain, had led the human forces not in conquest, but in demonstration. First major battle had taken place at the Altair Junction, a critical hyperspace nexus that connected 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. The Gelti had controlled this junction for 4,000 years, using it to regulate trade and movement throughout their territory. Their fleet was ancient, but massive, powered by crystal matrices that had been perfected over millennia. Commander Lisa Carter had led the human strike force that challenged Gelti control of the junction. Her ships were smaller and fewer in number, but they used tactics that the crystalline beings had never encountered. Instead of meeting the Gelti fleet in direct confrontation, the human ships had adapted their approach during the battle itself. Human vessels seemed to predict every move the Gelti made, not through superior sensors or intelligence, but through their ability to recognize patterns and adapt faster than their opponents could change strategy. When the Gelti formed defensive walls, the humans flowed around them like water. When they concentrated firepower, the humans dispersed and struck from unexpected angles. When they tried to retreat, the humans were already positioned to cut off their escape routes. The battle lasted 8 hours and ended not with the destruction of the Gelti fleet, but with their surrender. The crystalline beings, who had thought in terms of eternal stability and unchanging order, found themselves facing an enemy that could evolve during combat. It was a demonstration of everything the Council feared about humanity, but the most shocking moment came when Lisa Carter opened communication channels to offer the Gelti terms. She did not demand their submission or the destruction of their civilization. Instead, she invited them to join the growing alliance of species seeking a new form of galactic government. Some of the younger Gelti accepted immediately, tired of their elders' rigid thinking and eager to explore new possibilities. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human forces encountered Council fleets. The humans did not fight to destroy their enemies, but to prove that cooperation was more powerful than control. Dr. Maya Singh's hybrid technologies gave human ships capabilities that seemed impossible, but humanity shared these innovations freely. With any species willing to embrace change, the ThemHFY had been among the first to join the human alliance officially, their aquatic cities becoming centers of technological cooperation where species that had been enemies for millennia worked together on projects that benefited everyone. The Kalani followed, bringing their deep understanding of quantum mechanics and their enthusiasm for exploration. Even some of the older species began to question whether the Council's way was truly the best path forward. The energy beings of the Vextar Collective had observed galactic politics for eons without taking sides, but they became fascinated by humanity's approach to problem-solving. Their vast intelligence networks began providing information to the Resistance, helping coordinate actions across impossible distances. Dr. Alex Turner had spent the war years working with the liberated representatives of the 7 suppressed species, helping them rebuild connections with scattered survivors of their peoples. What they discovered changed everyone's understanding of galactic history. The supposedly extinct or contained species had not disappeared. They had gone into hiding, preserving their knowledge and culture while waiting for someone to challenge. The Council's authority. The Corvani had been secretly maintaining their engineering expertise in hidden workshops throughout the galaxy. The Helix had used their shape-changing abilities to infiltrate other species and gather intelligence about Council activities. 5 other civilizations had each developed their own methods of survival and resistance. Together, these forgotten peoples brought technologies and perspectives that had been suppressed for thousands of years. They showed the galaxy what innovation looked like when it was not restricted by the Council's fear of change. Fusion reactors that could power entire star systems. Faster-than-light communication that worked across galactic distances. Medical techniques that could extend the lifespan of any species indefinitely. The Council's final stand came not in a great battle, but in a desperate attempt to maintain relevance. The remaining members gathered in their crystal chamber and tried to negotiate a peace that would preserve their authority while making minor concessions to the rebellion. They offered to allow limited human expansion and restricted technological development under Council supervision. President Walker listened to their proposal with the patience of someone who had already won. He stood in the same spot where Ambassador Istkar had declared humanity illegal 1 year earlier, but the dynamics had completely changed. The humans were no longer the ones seeking acceptance into galactic civilization. They had become the architects of a new form of civilization that the galaxy was choosing to embrace. Your offer assumes that we need your permission to exist, President Walker said quietly. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, reaching the few remaining Council members and the billions of beings watching across the galaxy. But we learned something important this year. The galaxy doesn't need to be managed or controlled. It needs to be free to grow and explore and change. The formal surrender came not as a signed document, but as an acknowledgement of reality. The Galactic Council had lost its authority not through military defeat, but through obsolescence. The younger species had found a better way to organize galactic civilization, and the older species were welcome to join if they could accept that their time as rulers was over. The transformation that followed was swift and comprehensive. The former prison world of Kethmer was renamed Haven and became the new galactic capital. The massive facility that had once held political prisoners was converted into a research center where representatives of every species could work together on projects that had been impossible under the Council's restrictive oversight. Amy Brooks, now commanding the exploration vessel Pathfinder, led the first joint species mission beyond the galactic rim. Her crew included humans, Kelani, Nefri, Corvani, Helix, and even some younger Gelti who wanted to see what lay beyond the boundaries of known space. They were not expanding to conquer or control new territories, but to discover what wonders awaited in the vast unknown dot. The new galactic government was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of a ruling council that made decisions for everyone, it was a cooperative network where each species contributed according to their strengths and interests. The Corvani rebuilt the galaxy's infrastructure using designs that had been suppressed for millennia. The Nefri developed communication systems that connected every inhabited world. The humans provided the coordination and innovation that kept everything working together. Dr. Maya Singh established the first Galactic Technology Institute on Haven, where scientists from every species could share knowledge without restrictions or oversight. The breakthroughs that emerged from this cooperation were staggering. Energy sources that could power galactic civilization for millions of years. Transportation systems that could move entire populations between star systems safely. Terraforming. Techniques that could create habitable worlds in previously impossible environments. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy thought about itself. The old council had maintained order through fear of change and control of development. The new civilization embraced change as the fundamental force that drove all life toward greater possibilities. Instead of trying to prevent species from growing and evolving, the galactic community encouraged and supported such development.